So we're asking all the participants to come back. Is the mic on? The mic is on? Okay. So we're asking all the participants to come back slowly, and we're starting at the 7th panel, which is called the Media Engagement and Gendered Activism, Perspectives and Challenges. And first we have two of our Ukrainian guests, OLENA PAVLOVA and Maria Goja, who are both doctors of science and of philosophy, professors of departments of ethics, aesthetics and cultural studies at Taras Shevchenko National University of Kiev, Ukraine. Do you want to have separate presentations, or are you going to perform together? Together, okay. So I'm just gonna share your presentation, and you're welcome to join the cathedra or to have a презентация вашей жизни сейчас. Да, презентация вот кликер.
We decide to gather our efforts as a form of gender activism, as we usually do. Social media is a form of differentiation of the space of public, private, and intimate. It is related not only on coronavirus. Sorry? Time when it was obvious, even on physical level. But deeper tendency to community producing with the non-dominate of intersubjective relationships, but the mostly the differentiation of all fundamental elements, which is supported not domination and any certain force absence of privileged status at all. They have their own specific of audience production in the post-Soviet times in general and in the Ukraine in particular. The everyday affairs, especially in Ukrainian women, are involved in a whole network of communication which are loaded with the problems, not only the individual, but also in many ways with the task of raising children, and therefore it is more as a form of production community, as a tribe, where the generic tie is more important than individual ones. The structure of this type of community is difficult to trace, and they are mostly built as a form of networks. Such form of the undirected being together were duplicated by Ukrainian women in the process of immigration to other European countries, in particular to Germany and Lithuania. The democracy and radical change of the environment leads to an even more intensive reproduction of trust networks in the media form. However, the structure of self-organization of media communities of Ukrainian immigrants reproduces the domestic one, gender and topographic affiliations. It's the Ukrainian, the common names for the media society, and you can see the repeated of this self-representation in the Emigrant channel in Germany. And the Lithuanian material will be represented by Maria.
So I will continue. Thank you very much for opportunity to present our research or start of our research. So as it was mentioned, social media can be viewed as a postmodern public space, and media communities can be seen as modified public organizations that traditionally perform multiple important social and cultural functions. One of such problems is the problem of refugees, in particular, problem of Ukrainian refugees. After the start of full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, many Ukrainians left the country, fleeing the hostilities that came close to their families and homes. First of all, women with children left because martial law was introduced in the country from the first day of the invasion. And according to this law, all men from 18 to 60 years old were forbidden to cross the state border. Later, Верховна Rada of Ukraine approved presidential decree on general mobilization. And according to statistics, 14.5 million of Ukrainians left the country. After the occupation of Kiev, Kharkiv and Kherson regions, part of population returned, but a significant number of citizens remained abroad for various reasons. They settled in a new place better than in Ukraine. Their homes were destroyed in their homeland, and when I prepared material at the end of April, the situation was one, and the last recent weeks showed the escalation of the situation in Ukraine, and we can mention that new wave of escalation force Ukrainians to stay abroad. Moreover, due to the specifics of the new wars, as Marie Kaldor calls them, the danger to the civilian population is everywhere, far from the line of combat. The battlefield is blurred. In European Union, Poland became the leader in hosting Ukrainians, where at the beginning of this year, more than half a million our citizens lived. Almost a million Ukrainians stay in Germany. Against such background, 73,000 Ukrainians in Lithuania is a small number in absolute terms. But if we take into account that the population of Lithuania in 2023 is 2,860,000, then Ukrainians who arrived are 2.6% of total population. It puts Lithuania in the top 5 countries that have accepted Ukrainians since the beginning of the invasion. The Ukrainians bring their specifics to the life of Lithuanian cities. They are changing cultural, linguistic, and demographic landscape of Little Lithuania. Tracking these changes in real time is quite difficult. One of the tools to understand the tendencies is possible with the method of content analysis of social networks. For example, Ukrainians who arrived in Lithuanian city Kaunas actively use Facebook for communication. On the Facebook platform, there are on the Facebook platform, there are several groups for Ukrainians in Kaunas. They are different in titles: Ukrainians in Kaunas, in Ukrainian, in English, in Russian, in Ukrainian languages, this title of the different groups. These groups consist from 3,000 up to 16,000 members. The group I have chosen for analysis is the group Girls in Kaunas, Девочки Kaunas. It is rather small. It consists of 3,200 participants on April 2023. But also I have to mention here very important remarks for me. Many Ukrainian women who have gone abroad deliberately break their former social ties in Ukraine. Settling abroad, they stop communicating with their former colleagues, neighbors, and sometimes relatives. The reasons need to be further explored. Perhaps in order to assimilate faster in a new environment, they need to stop thinking about the past. Or maybe it's possible they do not want friends and relatives bother them in a new place. where everything can be started from the very beginning. But the group Girls in Kaunas was created in September 21, half a year before the war started. It was founded by the girl who came to Kaunas to study. She indicated at the title that the group was created only for girls, women, to discuss topical women's questions, as well as help each other with the search for manicure masters or where to buy, where to go. And it will also be possible to arrange meetings in a cafe for group members. Initially, the group consisted mainly of Belarusians who left since 2020. In the right corner of the slide, we can see the message of one of the members that was put in the eve of the invasion in February 23. She complains that there are only 300 participants in the group. When I calculated all this data at the end of the April, the group consisted of 3,020 members, mostly Ukrainian women refugees in Kaunas. So during the wartime, since the February 24 up to the April 27, they published 1,590 messages I analyzed. Empirical material was summarized in terms of bodily, social, and spiritual aspects of the lives of refugees. Specificity of Russian language and Ukrainian language content is important for Ukrainians. And traditionally, there were Russian-speaking and Ukrainian-speaking citizens. The beginning of the invasion coincided with the strengthening of the state language policy and the enforcement of communication in the state language in service sector, in public sphere, in public space. But the beginning of war created, among other matters, linguistic resistance of citizens. There is a high percentage of citizens who switch to the Ukrainian language in public and in private life. Often the language becomes a sign of national activism and the resistance to the occupiers. But the language specificity of the wave of Ukrainian refugees reflects the case that warfare hostilities are in the east and south part of Ukraine, where traditionally Russian-speaking population was living. And the Russian-speaking refugees arrived to Lithuania, and as Lithuanians say, for the first time since Lithuania gained independence, the Russian language is distinctly heard in public spaces. First of all, it should be noted that after Ukrainian refugees entered the Facebook community, Girls in Kaunas, the content of the post changed in a specific way. On the one, but these changes are not very evident. On the one hand, having survived in terrible events, having received the experience of war, women are trying to preserve the signs of the former normal way of life, grasping for normality in significant moments. And this is, such tendency is reflected in content of the posts. So at the bodily optic, we can see the first place of the sphere of beauty and self-care. Various offers and requests for eyelash and hair extension, search for beauty services make up 44% of posts. This is the most obvious example to keep the traditional way of life in changing world, and showing that everything is okay with their financial and spiritual, emotional condition. The second most important topic for refugees is requests to find a doctor And what is interesting that statistics demonstrates that mainly they are searching for gynecologists, mammologists, then gastroenterologists and dentists. So purely female doctors come first. And at the same time also this topic is very interesting because here posts are both in Ukrainian and in Russian, and language does not matter. Girls mention in their post that for Ukrainian speaking participants, the main point is the doctor has to be able to understand them. Local doctor from refugees, and they would understand the doctor. One more topic is about ask for medicine for drugs. Then it's concerning bodily optics. While talking about social optics, also the main topic is buying and selling goods. Also, buying and selling goods and advertising of personal business. It's also the sign of normality, the attempt to find the state of normality. And also you see here that personal business cakes of any complexity, so any complexity of ordinary life. And it's one part of messages, but later on we see the smaller in number, but very important, but it's novelty of the group connecting with the refugees. Logistics and parcels, it's also a new topic of the group because logistics to move to Ukraine, to get parcels from Ukraine, and charitable distribution of things and request for essentials for free. It's a novelty of warfare time. And what is also interesting is that request for the necessary belongings for free disappears by the end of the autumn 22, when they settled maybe and organized their life. And also very, household services, real in content, in directions, and accommodation search was also connected with the state of refugees. And there are variants of these posts, but there are some comments, in not in one post, but in several posts. There were comments of those who have already arrived that locals are reluctant to rent housing for Ukrainians. The next topic, pets. Also, it's also interesting that the situation with pets during during the war in Ukraine is very terrible, because many people who left their homes, they stay their pets at home, and it's a tragedy for all ecologists that these animals usually died in empty houses last winter. But pets in this local community in Kaunas is the symbol of what such neighbor relations, not only with people, but also with animals, cats, rabbits, dogs, and so on. The next topic is the spiritual search. Spiritual search also, it shows the life, the everyday life. But what is interesting for me is that twice at this group I saw the advertising of European Humanities University the program Student for a Week. And also for me, the very interesting. The kindergartens, also search of kindergartens and comments recommendations and calls for recommendations, and speaking clubs, book clubs, pushes of books. And what is interesting is that the Ukrainian speaking refugees are more active in such spiritual communication with the help of books. So they are searching books in Ukrainian. They are searching for speaking clubs on intellectual, maybe on cultural matters, and also speaking club. I have to mention that a very big call for communication in Lithuanian, to study Lithuanian, so people are ready to stay here and to learn language and to communicate in Lithuanian. And also, the next topic is request for communication. For me, it was very interesting because usually girls mark that they are Ukrainians, talk about their hobbies. So in their posts, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in search of some girls to walk, to talk. With children or individually, or maybe with special interests. They talk about their hobbies and try to find friends for walks and leisure. And also very interesting as for me post, it was one post, but I could not come across a spouse proposal. So the girl advertises her Lithuanian friend who works hard and has no time for searches of a good wife, to create a family, and she tries to help him. The next, it's also very big topic, request for information on Lithuanian policy towards Ukrainians, and also Lithuanian, Poland, and Ukrainian public services, as registration, migration, migration documents, passports for Ukrainians, registration, maybe dissolution of marriage abroad, and so on. The next, also rather important topic is the topic, the call for psychologists, or offering or request for psychologists. Also, I consider it is connected with the psychological problems of refugees and so on. But the ideological or patriotic events, as I call them, they are not big in number, but they are essential, especially in spring, in summer. Information how to help Ukraine. So weaving textiles into camouflage nets, producing trench candles for troops from tin cans, and information about different patriotic events. Also, in this group, we can see the post connected with Embroidery Day and with the Eastern production industry. So many offerings and requests for Easter cakes. And at the end, we can see also the rules of communication and surveys for the members of the group. And also, as we research with OLENA, not the first virtual community in different focuses. So I have to mention that rules of communications are fixed, obviously, in different forms, in different modes, but rules and call to follow them are inevitable part of such vibrant communities. And here I try to generalize, sum up this data now with topics, languages, Ukrainian and Russian, the amount of posts in Russian and Ukrainian languages. And you see almost everywhere the number of Russian posts is far more greater than in Ukrainian, but there are several positions where we can see even or equal proportion or equal number, or maybe sometimes even more in Ukrainian. So it's on bodily, social, and spiritual topics, optics for the topics represented in this data. At the end, I would mention also several comments that there is a trend that specifies the community I researched, but if we treat this issue in more detail, we can get interesting results. Public communication in such community makes it easier transitions from the virtual dimension to personal one. To personal messages, first of all, when they try to clarify some details of the posts in private messages. And on the other hand, make easy transition from the virtual dimension to the offline. Today, the dominance of virtual communications is not surprising, but such transition to offline communications give hope for the revival of traditional social communications in new conditions. And internet gives additional space for social interactions. Then OLENA will continue, and it's not a general summing up, but some comments to my part of the presentation, that internet gives additional space for social interactions. It provides existing relations and builds new ones. Online communities in social media are considered as weak links in society, when geographically diffused people are united by specialized topics to discuss and act. And here we can mention the classics of Robert Putnam concept of social capital as a network of mutual social relations. There are two forms of social capital Putnam mentioned. The bonding capital, characterized by close group ties of members, and bridging capital, defined by outwardly directed associative ties of members. And henceforth, Mickey Kittelson concludes that online communities based on bonding relations consolidate interpersonal contacts of their members within small community. And online communication of bridging relationships extend the circle of contacts of the members at the expense of strangers. And thank you for your attention, and OLENA will continue.
I will be represent material from the one Ukrainian media community from the Germany. It's have name the Holodenko Geometry. Holodenko is the name of the some Ukrainian psychologists who organized and gathering people in Ukraine, and after her immigration she continued to do this in Germany, and if even have some department in another country. For example, exists Poland, Holodenko, and another. I'm not clarify for me how everything is connection, but it's very interesting. The most important hypothesis in our way that the media society organizing as a segmentary differentiation in the terms of Niklas Luhmann, and in this way it's not supposed to be more difficult or increasing some hierarchical structure. In this way, maybe of course it needs more detailized in the some topic or timing or in other rates, but the common hypothesis such as. And this messengers in this certain channel, Telegram channel, propose us the similar structure. Of course, some of the messengers posts are devoted to some extraordinary case, as political meetings, as some tragic cases, destroying of the hydroelectric station in Kakhovka, or more less tragic as beginning of the German tickets, which was begun at the May, and big emotional labor in this way produced, but the same structure is about the everyday deals, the fears which repeated the topic, the message, the posting, and even exists some general answer from the member of communities to understand what happens. I generalize some of the most popular topics in this repeating and generalizing way. You can see is have a relationship to the Kaunas community. The first level was bodily representative well-being. The second position, which I propose to your attention, is the level of the civil well-being. And as I'm generalized in this way, is the level of the culture well-being, which has the different topics, but the same several needs to summarize. Very interesting for me to understand how it's everything organized, and which optics, which lens we can apply to understand how all these different and non-linear connection measures can be gathered. As usual, I focus my attention on Kant optics. In the works, the faculty conflicts, he proposed that all labor division in the his enlightened age can be reproduced not only with having deal with object, but in the division of the human needs. He proposed this structure of the division of the human needs, and he connects the university structure and structure of its faculty as an answer to these human needs in a certain way. And we can see that some shift exists in the human needs in the contemporary time, in the structure of the media community message. For example, internal needs, which we can see proposed by the Kant, is not the same as the cultural or as proposed to classify spiritual needs Maria, but their level can be seen in the common optics in this way, and not only the level and classifying of these human needs, but the common ways between understanding human needs by Kant and maybe allow us for interpreting this way. It's about its relationship in the between the public and private, as formulated Kant, using of reason, or public and private spheres in our more shame formulation. Why? Kant by himself formulates the person in the everyday needs functionalize a cog in a machine. because they not use their own reasons. It need to brave use own reasons, but they managed by expert and books took the place of our understanding. It's Foucault repeated about the Kant, about next time of the modern, next level of the modern, but it's the same way to use our attention for life at whole. And in this way, we can see, searching for some experts in our time, addict with their explanation and ruling by this media sphere as some addition to the expert management of human lives. And the structure, as Kant formulate the modern society propose us governing the lives, the individuals, the private persons, by the organizing, the preparing this expert sphere. That's why not only directed, but mediate way to control people by their preparing for their producing this expert sphere. And for Kant and his humor is the differentiation between the level of the low and higher faculty, because the low higher faculty help people with their everyday needs, and in this way it's have the high status. And the low faculty, it's not answer for the human needs, it's the mediated role is in the preparing of this expert sphere. Only in this sphere, the using of the reason in the public way without some subjectivities tendency can be the guarantee for the really public using of reason. In this way is really some rationalizing of the modern life. And in this way, we can see the shifting between not special preparing of the some not only expert sphere, of course it's continue to be, but in another way we have another forms of producing deliberation sense of community, not by the preparing of expert, but the producing of the rules which we try to research too, or in this way it's there some of course influence the common culture, and of course the especially diffraction in media sphere and producing media society, how these rules, how this deliberation sense of community to be to produce. And as for us, the shift in this organizing of public sphere is not about the agreement of the values. It's more about the finding, searching of the common well-beings. And not only information level, of course, the strengthening of the weak ties is as circulation information, not with the commercial ground, but in more open way. It's the new shift in the organizing late modern age, but this transmission from the online and offline light, it needs to be understood to in way to explain and clarifying of this shift of organizing new type of organizing common well-beings. And the model of decision making for this kind of community. As for me, as researcher culture studies, is important to clarify the materiality of digital text, all these options to organize, as Regis Chartier proposed us, to understand that the electronic text not functional as printed text. They have total another context of processing on functioning, and of course new genres of this sense of significance which represented in it, and of course the way producing of auditory of community in this way. And we need to understand all this formal superstition to take into account how all this new form of life, new form of digital activism produce and functionalize. And of course, for me, as last conclusion in our way, this understanding, the research of women society community propose us to take into account that now we not research the role of women in society as it was in the classic for 20th centuries. It's about being of community of women as activities part of the media society, media community, and in this way it's transformation of structure of hierarchy of media. It's not supposed to be forbidden for men taking part in this kind of media society, but it not apply, it not supposed by them. Of course, some sentences and statements we can see men activities, but majority of them can be proved not on the number of the women participants, not only the by topic which have the woman tendency, not only interpreted, but the what they are about. And we can see the transformation of discourse practice, which are begin to be more emotional, more non-linearity, more inclusiveness, because exclusive is a form of more hierarchical way, more man way, and in this way network this non-hierarchical practice of women way together, and it's important moment to understand. And this photo took me from the Odessa Archaeological Museum. It's a photo of the figures from the Tripillian Neolithic culture, and it's very broad for different museums, but the common way to present him is as a certain position, as a certain figure. But this circle of the women, what represent this, give more clarifying position to understand how the women society might be not different, but particular specific for them in understanding how it works. And the last answer for what the specific transformation from Ukrainian media society to the Ukrainian women media society in immigration. Of course, in Ukraine, women not rooted only in media society. They have different social and cultural role. In this way, their focus for the media communication as a way to keep us in balance. Of course, it's more specific. The other ways are restricted, and in this way, the migration media community propose us to understand more clearly, more obviously how everything is organizing. Thanks.
Thank you for your presentations. Are there any questions on the auditorium, or I'm going to take the first hand and ask myself first? My question is related to both of you, since you have a very conjoined research. While speaking about Ukrainian women in social media, is it more about the gender identity as a woman, or is it about some identities of social roles, like as a mother, for example? There are lots of so-called mom groups that are often called like moms of particular city, or Ukrainian moms of particular city. Is a connection in social media, is it more about the gender role as a woman, or about the social role as a mother, or as a girl, as a young woman? Sorry, you need to answer in the microphone because we're recording.
With the concept of Scott Lash about the important tendency is the differentiations, the way of not to be different between all these roles, and my sense of speech was about not only topic what we are represent, but the way how we organizing through all this way of the differentiation our roles. It's not about role of women, but the role of women way to organizing. Without this differentiation.
Thank you. Are there any questions in the auditorium? Anybody wants to ask something? Because we also kind of short on time, and I suggest you move on to the next presentation because it's also connected to Telegram and social media. This panel in general is very connected, and if some questions will arouse to the different spokesperson, I suggest you to ask it a little bit later. So the next spokesperson I'm inviting is Ksyusha Malikova. She's actually feminist and Telegram activist, so she's going to be talking about the Telegram. She's currently studying for a master's degree in gender at YSU, and her topic is the specificity of the system and collective interaction, and the dynamic of grassroots initiatives on the example of women's activist Telegram channels in Belarus. I'm going to share your presentation, so you would have an access to this. Here you go. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Ksenia. I'm media activist and I'm studying to be gender researcher, and I'm today would like to introduce to my team and that's up. Women's political activism is an integral part of the life of any civil society, especially when it takes place within authoritarian states. Authoritarianism attempts to exclude women from the political fields as part of process of becoming part of civil society. Women may not have the opportunity to unite when they are deprived of a sense of self-confidence. After all, unification is accomplished at the point at which an individual initially discover her individual values, skills, and abilities, and then meets a group of people who hold a similar view. Political regimes that suppress freedom of speech and expressions through a central structure of control and pressure prevent civil society from feeling its integrity. The unification of people in the achievement of common freedom and equality can influence democratic decisions making and change the political order. Even in democratic communities, not all people have access to the political sphere and freedom of expressions to realize their potential. Despite advanced inequality, women still face difficulties in realizing their full potential, and this is a long process. Media space proves to be a valuable resource for unification and collective interaction. In the political regime, prevent people from experience unity and support digital reality provided tools to help overcome the obstacles that the regime organized. For women, the media space can also be first place where they feel supported and connected. The history of patriarchy is so deep. Unfortunately, even today, women have to face oppressions and discrimination based on misinformation present in public ideas. Media space have great potential for overcoming the problems of misinformation and facilitation collective interactions among women. In order to use their potential effectively, it is necessary to understand the specific of the implementation of women cyberactivism. In my presentation, using the example of women activist Telegram channel in Belarus, I will examine several distinctive factors of the system of collective interaction carried out by grassroots initiatives, shows the media space. I will talk about the nature of cyberactivism and the role of women in it, and I will provide an analysis of what changes in civil society the process of women's unifications through the media space brings about, using the activist of the Girls Power Belarus Telegram channel as an example. And finally, I conclude with a discussion of the problematic fields since in feminist activism in media space. The digital revolution, especially the fusion of technology with the physical world, has led to global change in the social, political, and economic spheres of society, which has greatly affected global feminist activism as well. Tools such as blogs and social networks have democratized the feminist movements, opening up new opportunities for dissemination of feminist ideas. The active expansions of the global media space has made it possible to disseminate information rapidly across borders and to provide wide access to wealth of ideas and knowledge that was difficult or impossible in many parts of the world only a few decades ago. Using media tools, feminists has adapted to internet culture, employing humors and other creative formats as effective means of communication and information dissemination. Online feminist activism has repeatedly demonstrated its effectiveness in issues related to legal and political discrimination against women, especially in countries with strong discriminatory policies against women, such as Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Iran, and the end. In Afghanistan, for example, the work of the Revolutionary Association of Women of Afghanistan has inspired global awareness and oppositions to the repressive Taliban regime. In the area of mass data surveillance, apps such as Telegram and Signal are gaining in popularity and importance. This platform has managed to create a secure tool for sharing data, respecting all the rules of anonymity and encryptions. This guaranteeing to users that their data will not be shared or sold to others. For these reasons, Telegram and Signal become a particularly valuable resource for journalists, human rights activists, and people who engage in human rights activities, as the platforms protect their data from law enforcement and totalitarian government. In addition, the ability to create channels with an unlimited number of subscribers and instantly share information with users has created unique tools for bloggers, politicians, and activists, including femme activism, who need to disseminate information to large group of people. In comparisons, Facebook, WhatsApp has 256 participants in closed group, and while Telegram can create groups of up to 100,000 people. It's important to note that feminist activism in Eastern Europe media space differs from feminist activism in other regions of the digital world. The specificity lies in the introduced change in discourse and the reinterpretation of social ideas under the prism of feminism values. Speaking of gender inequality, feminism initiatives in the digital space create a new discourse that help to critically rethink other social problems stemming from inequality. Eastern Europe feminist activism, which uses the media as a platform, is multi-layered. This multi-valism manifests itself through a series of goals that the feminist movement sets for itself in the Belarusian and other Eastern Europe media space. Such goals include, first, combating misinformation and gender stereotypal thinking. Next, solving the problem of low representation of women in the media space. Next, creating a digital community in which women will feel supported and united. Next, achieving common goals through the creation of women community. And last, protecting the right and freedom of every woman. Now, using the activities of the Girls Power Telegram channels and as an example, I will discuss how these goals are being achieved by the feminist movement in Belarusian media space. This is project, the Girls Power Belarus Telegram channel covers of the problem of gender inequality, domestic violence, disadvantaged rights and low representations of women in Belarusian media. So the activities of this project, the field is being created in Belarusian media space, where every Belarusian woman has the opportunity to get information free from stereotype. Project emerged during the protest movement in Belarus in 2020. After that, project implemented many projects aims at supporting women not only in Belarus but also in countries suffering from the action of political regimes. In 2022, the team raised 60,000 euros to help Ukrainian women affected by military violence of Russian soldiers. At the end of 2020, Girls Power launched project She is an Expert, where every woman can share her professional experience that describe the low representation of female experts in the Belarusian media. The idea of a male face Belarus and the activity support of feminist activities can serve as a kind of symbol of the struggle of equality and democracy in the country, as well reminded of the important role that women play in public life. During the Belarusian protest movement of 2020, women played a prominent leadership role. However, we cannot ignore the fact that even after the peak of the protest movements, women continued to be active politically, provide expertise and create any project. But if in 2020 women were supported by the entire civil society, now we see the need women to seek support with their own association. This is due to the fact that Belarusian civil society still harbors the problem of gender stereotype thinking. The realizing of the personal potential present in women depends on the extent to which women support each other in a common struggle. Digital communicators such as the Girl Power Belarus Telegram channel make it possible not to forget and not to put acid as a struggle for equal rights and in society. And now just let's look at this coverage statistic of Telegram channel for 2020-2022. Not surprisingly, that highest rate of coverage is observed in 2020, a time when the inerrancy Belarusian civil society began to support women, their power and their potential to change the political order. Now, It's critical for feminist movements in cyberactivism to maintain this figure even when the idea of women's rights is not raised in public discourse. As we can see, the project GPB is gradually returned to the heights figure of 2020. This is done by conveying the problem field directly. What does this problem field represent for femactivism in media space? First, sexism, reinforcement of stereotypes and misogyny. Over the past decade, media activism has proven to be an effective way to narrow the gender gap and promote gender equality in society. Despite this, however, we also see trends toward provoking and reinforcing sexism, stereotyping of women, and misogyny. This is especially true in emerging economies such as in Eastern Europe, Africa, and Asia. Discriminatory gender practices are shaped by social, economics, culture, and political structures in the physical world and similar reproductives online of digital platforms. Of great importance here in the way power is shaped, implemented, and used digital platforms. Rather than becoming and inequalities, there are the same constraints that bind women in the physical shape appear in the digital space. While the issue of gender discrimination in the media space seems to be something new, the problem is deeply rooted in gender mechanism of power and control. Second, digital gap. On the one hand, cyberfeminism provide a unique opportunity to become active participants in change, regardless of geographic borders. However, the issue of the digital divide remains significant. The gap between women who have access to digital media, the internet, and the various online platforms, and those who lack access due to challenging social, economic, and political circumstance. In order to realize the full potential of digital feminism, it's essential to continue to work on increasing access to technology among the poorer and more marginalized segments of society. One way to achieve these bottom-up goals is to make connection between online activism and offline activism on the ground. Culture and eternal political difference and barriers. Another barrier is global gender equality often arises from the mishmash between primary gender issue and culture difference among women. Factors such as the degree of freedom of speech strongly affects the effectiveness of women movements. A situation where online activism fails to translate into offline participation, this supporting and advancing a common cause lead to difficulties in achieving goals. It's important for femactivism to become more decentralized and democratic. The lack of help and support from governments, corporations, and state institutions and others in establishing the legislative and social structures necessary to combat gender inequality in society poses a serious obstacle to effective media feminism. And last, the tools provided by media spaces allow for proactive action in the face of political insecurity and pressure. Cyberactivism provided tools for organizing horizontal mobilization when there is urgent political need to do so. Cyberactivism, feminist initiatives have the opportunity to influence the problem of women's underrepresentation in the media and the difficulty of united women expertise. Feminism initiatives also face obstacles. The circle of the problem lies not in the media space, but in social system itself, where women's expertise is ignored. In such an atmosphere, women may feel intimidated to share their expertise, which is necessary to Belarusian civil society. Feminist cyberactivism has a great potential to create an environment in which women's voice are not only heard but also supported. That's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
We already have our first questions.
Да, а можно сразу попросить с переводом, чтобы я точно все поняла на русском? Или на белорусском, как удобно.
The rule of the conference is that the speaking language is English, so we need to translate it. That's okay, but just in case, since we're streaming and recording for any international participants.